We are live. Welcome to Beyond the Veil, a new episode. I'm the host, Jay Drizzy. Yeah, the fleet commander, co-host, my man, T. Manuel. How's it going, brother?
Everything is well. Everything is well. Positive forward motion.
Ever positive forward motion. Yes, sir. How's it going today?
Oh man, good thus far. It's a little snow. It's snow going on. It's the second day of spring, and we got about 3 to 4 inches on the ground already. It's supposed to snow till 11. Other than that, everything is wonderful. Oh, and my car wouldn't start, but everything is good.
Man, I'm in that predicament as well. Seen better days as far as that goes, but hey, no complaints here.
No complaints. I got a day off. That's good.
Indeed. Coming up on this spring break, and yeah, man, children at home, and fun times. Indeed. So today we hopefully got some interesting topics that will get you all engaged and involved, interested in looking at things on the other side of the veil. So how you want to kick this off, my brother?
Man, it is completely up to you how you want to proceed from here. Definitely ready though.
All right. So we were talking about melanin and its military applications, scientific functions, and overall just awesome capabilities last week. So I thought we would move into, as it deals with the military applications, we could go maybe even into bloodline wars, Star Wars, mind wars, the mind mapping that they've been doing, what they've come up with, the mind hacks, even hacking the cells of the body, how they can basically perform warfare on a multicellular, multidimensional level.
Yeah. One thing to say in alignment with that is an experiment that I ran. You got 432 megahertz, then you got the Schumann resonance, which is I think 728, but it's always changing. The Schumann resonance is the resonant frequency that the Earth is on. And so it changes, it'll go up, it'll go down, but it's usually between 7 and 8. I did an experiment where I ran the 440 and the 432 megahertz together. And what I noticed when I had it on my headphones, you could only hear one or the other playing. And so then I tried the Schumann resonance, It was, I did it at 728. And then I ran the 440 behind it. And it had the same effect. You could only hear one at a time. So then I increased the 440 megahertz. And then you couldn't hear the 732 at all, the Schumann resonance. When I did it with the 432, which is a healing resonance, you couldn't hear it at all. So, just something interesting to note. If there's, people have said that there's messages coming from the planet, at this resonant frequency. People said there's messages coming from the sun. They call them downloads, you know what I mean? And things like that. So, just a military application, if those were being received by us or perceived by us in any way, if they played another frequency then we couldn't hear those frequencies. And if they played a message on those frequencies, we have the potential to be able to receive them. And then just to make it plain, I guess, uh, remember that guy that said he was like 200 and something miles away from the mall? And then he got a message in his head and he drove all the, I mean, not a message in his, he heard a voice in his head that told him to drive 200 plus miles to a mall.
Mm.
And then he went in the mall and he opened fire. It was one of the mass shootings of last year, I believe, or the year before. Was it last year or the year before? You remember?
Trying to remember. This was this in Miami?
No, no, not the one in Miami. The one where the guy, the military guy, had created a system that for Flint that would run water out of the air.
Yeah,
He was,
yeah. Okay.
yeah, and then he happened to be fired on in that mass shooting, where that guy heard the message in his head, and he lost his life in that shooting. That was pretty interesting, and I'm not sure if that was last year or the year before, but nobody's ever got to benefit from that water out of the air machine or anything like that. And
Wait
he
a
was
minute.
going to go ahead.
You talking about the brother from Alabama? The,
Yes.
the I thought he was still alive. I wasn't even aware that he died in a public.
Yeah, in that mass shooting where the guy came from he drove like 240 something miles. The brother who created that machine
Yeah.
was in the mall, and he lost his life in that shooting in the mall.
Golly, did not realize that took place.
Yes, yes indeed. And interesting to note, they said it's like neurotoxins in the water in Flint, and they've had the money to fix it for years, many years. They've had the finances necessary to fix it. And there was also another case of a woman, and I'll find her name as we're going through the video. She she was a Congress. She was either in Congress or she was some form of government. You know what I mean? And she went against and opened up a case for Flint, and she lost her life. She was found in the trunk of a car. You know what I mean? And
I
it's
did
just
hear about her. I did know about that.
yeah, and so as far as that, I was saying all of that to say that neurotoxins lessen your ability to anyway. Just it may have pertinence to military uses and vibratory fields, and neurotoxins lessen your ability to fight that if that was occurring. You know what I mean?
Most
Speculative.
definitely. Goodness. Okay, so wow. So I knew the Flint water crisis never ended. What I found extremely interesting is during that time where the public was made aware across the country, and if not the world. I want to say there was a film. The filmmaker Michael Moore had come out with something, and he's from Flint. He was showing military operations or exercises taking place at night in portions of Flint that were supposed to be inactive. I mean, floodlights and the whole nine, full on military gear. And the public was concerned, and they basically just told them, "Oh, we've been doing this. Don't worry about it." Um, you know what I mean? Just like
Yeah.
weird stuff. Like, okay, so the water's poison, obviously.
Hmm.
They have the ability to clean it up, but they're not. But
Yes.
there are toxins in the water in I would say almost every major city, um, as well as in the rural areas. The wastewater treatment plants seem to simply mainly remove like the stuff you can see or that's so heavy or thick that it would cause alarm when you saw it, or tasted it. But it's still. I mean, you remember we used to drink from the hose.
Yeah. Yep.
We used
Yep.
to drink from the spigot. They had pump wells, well pumps, excuse me, water pumps with wells at the bottom of them in the public parks. You know,
Yeah.
you go play basketball or play on the playground, and then you'd go over to the pump and you'd hit it up, and that air pressure would build and bring the water, and it would run for minutes, several
Hmm.
minutes, each time, and it's just amazing the difference in how times have changed, how we operate, what we deem safe, what we man are affected by. you know,
Yeah, I mean, you talking about that made me think of the fluoride. We discovered long ago, many years now, the medical field and the science studies have all shown that fluoride is not good for us,
right.
but but they still place it in the water. You know what I mean? And
And then if you boil the water, the fluoride turns into another type of toxin that is cancer causing.
mm,
So I just was having this discussion with my kid's mother, like, yo, you got a Brita filter and you're gonna boil the water, but the water has fluoride in it. She was like, it like didn't even register. So then I had to explain to her and then show her, some of the things that people have been sharing as far as research, you know. But go ahead. You about to say something?
oh no, I was just gonna add on. I was trying to think of who it was. I was watching Dick Gregory earlier today, and it was talking about the destruction of melanin in relation to food.
Mm,
And then it dawned on me as you were talking, it's neurotoxins. There
yeah,
is a form of melanin called neuromelanin.
you're right. Correct. Yep.
So, it would be interesting to discover, you know what I mean, if those, in relation to melanin wars, if those neurotoxins negatively affected the melanin's ability to um, to take in energy and make it useful, and if it had any effect on that at all.
I would think so. I would think definitely because what do they call it? The cell, the centers, um,
Nucleus.
the nucleus, but also like the neural centers,
Okay.
um, things that can inhibit or block the transmissions to and from, uh, or just making it basically useless, rendering it useless in the manner of speaking, by like locking it down, causing it to malfunction or shut down. Just like a machine, or a
Hmm.
computer. You know, but yeah, man. So what do you think about, like, have you looked into at any point how they say they have mapped the brain?
Yes, I heard about them mapping the brain, and then they also were showing the sleeve conference this year. I call it the sleeve conference, but it was like a technology conference.
Okay.
And in the technology conference, they were talking about the bodies, that the sleeves that the consciousness could be inserted into after it was downloaded. And it was showing they were showing their new silicone and their new materials that they were building these body sleeves with. And they had them in these big bags. They had them in wet bags. You know what I mean? And that was interesting to know about they're developing the brain technology, and they've already developed the sleeve to put the brain in once they put it on a disc
So
or
can you break
store.
down the sleeve a little bit more?
Um, it's it's a synthetic body that looks pretty real, that can house the information. It's not like a clone in the sense that it goes through the biological birthing process, but it's
Mm.
a synthetic body that they create to house the physical body. It doesn't get tired. It doesn't have biological limitations. Let's put it like that. It doesn't have the same biological limitations that we face.
So I'm checking out something on neurohacking, right?
Mm.
It says there are three main categories of neurohacking methods: oral supplements or ingestibles, procedural training exercises, and the transmission of electrical currents through the brain.
Oh, it seems like we covered all three of those in this conversation thus far.
Yeah. So some of the well, one of the main focuses as it pertains to neurohacking is cognitive enhancement. Um, I mean, it looks like okay. The more we get into these sciences and the applications thereof, it's like abilities that were once held by individuals or just entire groups of people in the ancient world. You know, uh, telepathic communication, telekinesis, teleportation. Um,
Now, I mean, in light of that, they even had family lineages that had areas of expertise. If it was telepathy, if it was breathing techniques, they had family lineages, and then later on, they had schools. And we're talking about bloodlines as well in this war explanation, this war melanin. We're talking about bloodlines too. And after 3 or 4 generations of any action being repeated, it enters into the genetics. It becomes an inherent thing. So if you have families that were working on the development of telepathy over the course of 50 years, 100 years, 200 years, then their lineage would be born with that genetic coding available to them. So if
mm,
you had if you were in a war and you had a problem with people being able to read your mind, then you could target a certain lineage to stop that. If you were dealing with leaders, say um, speaking leaders or oracles or prophets, and a line of them, it's either get down or lay down in military. It's either you join us, you prophesy for us, you
mhm.
work for us, or you lay down. You know what I mean? And those were those that's pertinent to melanin and how much melanin a specific genetic type has. You know,
Whoa. So are you saying certain people were bred to interact or or engage with other bloodlines?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Hmm. It's almost like a chessboard, right? Where you would switch sides based upon the alignment that you chose in a matter or in a controversy.
Yep, like white and black on a chessboard.
Yeah. Yeah, I like to look at it as light and dark because I mean, not everything dark is evil, and not everything white is bright is or light is good. Uh,
Indeed, indeed, indeed.
but yes, like just like okay, gotcha. So they're facing off, and there's this controversy, and others may or may not be aware of it. Some may choose to get involved and choose a side, and others may choose to remain neutral and just observe, pop the popcorn, and sit back and watch.
Right, right, right. It's safer that way, some say.
Not if you have something that either side or if not both are interested in.
Indeed, indeed,
Like
indeed.
melanin. So
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Just in light of that, I was reviewing what we were talking about last week when we were reviewing the video, and we talked about how many years the melanin studies have been going on. and they didn't know about copper dosing mushrooms. So they had to be acquiring their melanin from living specimens, biological living specimens.
Well, let's just say melanin is the chlorophyll of the human body. So is that what True Blood and these other vampire programs are about, in your opinion?
Mm. It would make sense. It would make sense. And in light of bloodlines, they're always talking about bloodlines. Bloodlines are of great importance in the vampiric movie types. You know what I mean? The bloodlines are a great deal of importance, and they're usually fighting other bloodlines, which is interesting.
And a point of contention within the family lines often has to do with their lines being crossed with another or other family lines genetically, creating
Hmm.
unpredictability within the subjects that are born, or an anomaly in some type of abilities unlocked that were not previously held by, maybe except for 1% of their population, something to that effect.
You know what? The mixing that's going on at the level that it is, as far as races are concerned, is big deal. You know what I mean? I got at least 4 races within my genetic construction. And so that does leave science in a position where it doesn't know much, especially in the area of energy transference and melanin. Because if you had studied the dark skinned people, and you know what their melanin does, you had studied the races, and you discovered what it does. When the races begin to intermingle, you have no idea what's next if the energy rises.
So just
You
for
have no idea.
my bad, go ahead.
No, you did.
I didn't mean to cut off your statement. I
Oh
was
no, that was it. That was it. That was the end of it. I was just saying that so they would be having to study again.
So for clarity's sake, when you speak of races, are you referring to the once uh what's the word I'm looking for? The once established assumption in root races?
Yeah, the the germs in the NOI, they call them germs. You
Yeah.
got the brown germ, the black germ, the yellow germ, the white germ. You know what I mean? Then they called it races, and they started giving us titles and all of that type of stuff. But ultimately, what I'm talking about is the level of melanin that a group of people possesses. Are there, if they got more neuromelanin than they do the
You
melanin that
you
produces
melanin,
pigment. Yeah.
you melanin, EU melanin. So but okay,
Hmm.
so just from you touching on that again, like, not a scientist as far as secular sources are concerned. However, the root race theory, I feel, is really describing root bloodlines, root genetic codes, if you will, right? So, with those root genetic codes, combine you could combine codes, or you can isolate codes in order to present certain traits, abilities, um, characteristics,
Hmm.
personality types, etc. With that science, certain combinations would be unpredictable, but now they have CRISPR. You're not familiar with CRISPR? Okay, oh,
Uh,
okay. So let me pull up some things on CRISPR, because I'm not an expert on it, but definitely, okay. CRISPR Therapeutics. All right, it's a Swiss American biotechnology company headquartered in Zug, Switzerland. Is one of the first companies formed to utilize the CRISPR gene editing platform. So that gives you basic understanding of what they do. Okay. So they've been able
Who?
to cure acute lymphoblastic leukemia, all of them, acute myeloid leukemia, um, Angelman syndrome, Alzheimer's disease, aortic valve stenosis, uh, atherosclerotic heart disease, and atopic dermatitis, all through this genetic therapy tool that they call CRISPR. Um, so I bring this up because there's no way in the world that they couldn't understand that there's no such thing as races, plural, as opposed to bloodlines,
Hmm.
lines from which blood has matriculated, been presented or born through. Uh, and then we can get into the next stage when we talk about Star Wars, not just the film, not just the comic strip, but we're talking like how we are made of stardust, right? People have quoted this, and then they get into the carbon, but it gets a little bit away from the organic side because that carbon is being crystallized and coming out of a liquid form, similar to chlorophyll in a plant, right?
Hmm.
Um, and it transfers information,
Hmm.
very important information. Um, so, give me your take on that. Okay, as it applies to the germ, as NOY would refer to it back in the day. Um, how would that affect a gene that's germinating?
So they say that genes are your genetics turn on and off depending upon the atmosphere that you're in. So if you're in a heavily sun area, a sequence of genetics will turn on in relation to that. If you're in a cold area, a specific sequence of genetics will turn on for that. If you're smoking cigarettes, there's a specific genetic coding to help you to deal with the effects of that. If you're not smoking, there's another genetic code to operate your lung and hormonal system. So your atmosphere has a direct effect on your genetics. We got junk genetics and we got active genetics. We got the junk genetics can be activated if you're put in the right atmosphere for that to occur. So so when you get things that they don't understand necessarily, like they might have an understanding, but they don't understand the implications on genetics. If you got a solar flare approaching, you got a lunar eclipse approach. I mean, not a solar flare, a solar eclipse approaching. You got a lunar eclipse approaching. You got meteors. You got the atmosphere deplenishing and allowing more sun in. All of these things have the potential to change the genetics in a way that they don't know nothing about.
So, if there were additives, for example, in the form of particulates in food or in air or in the water, do could this possibly activate certain um, innate but yet dormant abilities that have been held in a form of what's the word? A form of a sleep mode, so to speak, like sleep
Indeed.
cells.
Indeed. And then if enough energy comes in, if there was another time where there was more sun coming into the planet, less sun coming into the planet, you know what I mean? We don't know what form we were in genetically at those points, but the markers remain. So, a person will say, I started eating healthy and then my mind got clearer. I was able to do more. I just had more energy. You know what I mean? And those can go either way. They can go in the reverse. I ate some food. I just want to go to sleep. You know what I mean? It depends on the composition and what it activates within you as far as energy transfer. The way you determine if it's going to affect you, how it's going to affect you, is how much electricity, how much energy does it provide for your system, and then your melanin has to be intact enough to transmute it. That's what I'm a little nervous about the whole concept of a melanin war. You know what I mean, or whatever. You know what I mean, or potential melanin war is without it operating, we also don't know what we are. It. So yeah.
Something I want to share. Hopefully, it's large enough. Let's see, to read. Okay, this is from. Well, let me do
Oh,
this.
this is expert.
This is from website NIH nim.nih.gov. Um,
Conducted before it will approve the widespread use of.
yeah, it talks about the healing of certain genetic diseases, um, but then it goes into the Food and Drug Administration required a series of clinical trials to be conducted before it would approve widespread use of gene therapy in psychiatric patients. Nevertheless, in a number of countries, there has been little discussion of legislature regarding genome editing for complex diseases such as psychiatric disorders. The regulation of CRISPR/Cas9 for human germ line editing in embryos has developed according to the different uses and purposes. 31.86 for human germline editing, it has been proposed that non viable embryos be used to study gene editing in a non integrated.
But what is a non-viable embryo?
I'm gonna let you look that one up. I have an answer, but I want you to give the clerical answer. Yeah, clerical answer as opposed to the layman's terms or answer.
It means no chance of survival.
Mhm.
The most common reason for this includes a baby born too prematurely to be able to survive for 23 weeks. A
Yeah,
so this is a fetus that they suspect is going to die or is born early
hmm
that they'll use for scientific research.
that's correct.
Okay.
That's what they're saying. Yeah. So,
So if a just a thought. So if a woman went into the hospital and she had a premature baby, and they're using this baby, I mean, the baby's lives, but 23 days, or makes it, or his life drops out of it and picks back up. Then those would can be considered the types of embryos or the types of fetuses that they would use for this scientific study. They induce
yeah.
anyway. Inducing labor is when you cause premature birthing,
hmm
right?
Could be.
Okay. Yeah, I just was thinking about that too. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, and essentially, if the program were approved, I mean, we know it exists. A woman could make that decision depending on the laws, where these trials or clinical trials are being performed, meaning that they could get pregnant just to do that. They could.
Yeah.
So, you know, I just want to finish this portion here because it was um, getting ready to go into the ethical issues. Let's see. So, gene study. Okay, they wanted to study. Let me go back. Blah, blah, blah. For human germline editing, interesting terminology. Germline editing. It has been proposed that non-viable embryos be used to study gene editing in a more integrative and complex way. However, many concerns remain about this application of CRISPR/Cas9, which involves ethical issues that are not completely clear. Um, According to Lamphere et al., genome editing is embryo in any in embryos could have side effects with profound repercussions due to the possibility of creating a mosaic embryo. Gene editing in non viable embryos began in China in 2015, following specific legislation for human research. Regulation of human genetic resources. Despite such regulations, in 2019, a Dr. Jiankui, Jiankui, he conducted a genome editing study in viable embryos
What? What? I'm sorry. Excuse me.
to alter the pathway HIV uses to affect cells by knocking out the C motif chemokine receptor 5 gene. The experiments were performed on twin embryos whose father was an HIV carrier. This study was controversial because the embryos were implanted in the mother without regard for off target mutations that could lead to other diseases in the newborns. Based on the above, we suggest that after corroborating the safety of gene therapy for psychiatric disorders, CRISPR/Cas9 system could be used postnatally in human and specific tissues. This is from an article. I just want to quote the source. We don't want no trouble. Uh, but yeah, this is the website. If you can see, this is not my research. This is research done. The National Library of Medicine, National Center for Biotechnology Information website. Thoughts?
I thought about the whole vampire thing again while you were talking, and some genetic types are not privy to solar experiences of a high level because it will cause
Basal,
problems.
basal cell carcinoma and other skin cancers.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so when you put that in relation to bloodlines, some genetic bloodlines are set up that way, and there are others who are not. So you got people who walk out in the sun, and then you had the vampires who operate and they couldn't be in the sun. But I remember in the movies they were trying to figure out how to be daywalkers. They were trying to figure out how to and so they did research in order to figure out how to achieve that, and they created hybrids. And in their creation of the hybrids, they mixed a wolf and a vampire and got a lichen, and a lichen became a problem to them. like the lichen started to be a problem to both the vampire and the wolf.
Well,
Fight.
the lichen is the wolf, right? You have because with vampire, I'm a bit of a nerd. I guess
Oh
vampire
no, no way.
vampire is Nosferatu, and then you have lichens, which is a subspecies of a wolf combined with a man. But they
Oh, okay. Well, no. Well, then it wasn't the lichen. It was the one where
it
they
was
mixed.
the lichen and the vampire mixed together. You
Okay. Okay.
and yeah, that was the anomaly that they couldn't, the unpredictable factor of both genetics being displayed, and when it would become when those characteristics would become pertinent or relevant in expression, like in combat or in tracking or hunting.
Mm.
Like yeah, so
So they run projects. They so it would be like studies you do to determine the effects by putting them in a certain setting, providing a certain air type, food type, or whatever, and then observing them to see what happens if their genetics are activated or not would be a way to remedy such problems. You know what I mean? If they were,
yeah, yeah. I mean, and at the core of all of this is melanin. Even the author of the Underworld series, he's a melanated brother, and I don't like to use just melanated, but he's of African or indigenous descent to Europe and Africa, and he also made it known that the lichens were people of hue, and that the vampires were the people who were of non-hue. But the combination of the two created a unpredictably powerful, skillful, and intelligent entity that was unable to be stopped by either. And remember, in his series, the older the blood, the stronger the carrier. So even against the primary or primordial bloodline carriers, this hybrid person was beyond their strength, beyond their speed. Uh,
beyond their capability of altering in a way that they were sure would work.
yeah, yeah. So I mean, we can go. The list can go on and on. I mean, Lovecraft Country, excellent
Oh,
series. Uh,
excellent series.
Also shows you that it doesn't matter what the hue when it comes to relatives. When it comes to kinship, it has very little to do with complexion and very much to do with the line in which you come from. Uh, but they needed the melanated ones because they were keys to unlock. Um,
If you can't get past a certain frequency, there are people with melanin types in high levels that would be able to deal with those high levels of energy because they would have the capability to process it. So if they were looking at yeah, I was just saying it the melanated people being genetic keys to things probably has a lot to do with their ability to transfer energy. Especially if energy is the means by which how to open something is being conveyed, so yeah.
what was that Netflix series where the brother, he had the ability to he would go into like different video formats and he was able to recover film or footage from film that was destroyed or perceived.
Oh,
Was it projector or something? Uh,
I can't. I know what you're talking about, but I can't place it right now.
uh, or was it Project 81? I cannot remember. Oh, goodness gracious. Archive 81. Thank you. Thank you, Google. All right. So, yeah, Archive 81. Check that out too. But in there, he was connected to a bloodline of people who were of a lighter complexion. And the melanated ones, was the blood that was needed to unlock the doors between dimensions and to bring certain other entities or energies over into this realm. Uh, yeah. Interesting stuff. So, this is all just for educational and entertainment purposes only. But if you read between the lines, you might perceive some things that are going on right under your nose or right in your face. And there's people that are warning you to be afraid of certain events and occurrences in which you might be the one that becomes empowered as opposed to destroyed, allegedly, and for
Allegedly.
entertainment and educational purposes only.
Oh, but I will say this. I am so looking forward to the lunar eclipse, and I'm so looking forward to the solar eclipse. I want to make sure I get out there and get to experience those. They say that's like a once or maybe twice in a lifetime thing. Make sure you get out, you get your experience in. And then, Jay, they insulted my intelligence, man. I was reading online. They say if you want to watch the eclipse, go hide in the shadow of a building, and then you can use your binoculars or you can look at it, but you cannot look directly into it. And then I thought to myself, I said, what changes about directly looking at something by standing in the shadows and looking at it? Then you just don't get shined on by it, but you're still looking directly at it.
Interesting. Certain cells, they talked about, do not move unless you're not watching them. Like when you observe them, they won't do their thing. But when you move away from observance, it's measurable progress or actions that's being taken while not being observed. So it's interesting that they would utilize that same logic for something like an eclipse because
Yeah, strange.
uh, mhm, maybe there's something that would take place in you if you're observing it. But if you don't observe it, even though it's going on, it won't be as active.
Yeah, and I can see that they say that the pores of your skin, your eyes, the palms of your hands, the soles of your feet, all have the capability to take in energy.
Mhm.
So,
Hmm. All right. All right. All right. Makes sense. So I think we've gotten into, yeah, I think we've covered just about everything except cloning.
that's another subject matter that I'd be a little nervous about. You know what I mean? A little nervous about, but with the genetic wars that have been going on, if you have somebody that's an excellent musician, Kanye West, we'll use him as a speculatory example.
Right.
Okay. So if you have someone who has been developing the ability to do music and convey messages in music, okay,
Right.
uh, then you had to wait till he got here. If you can't keep his genetic code, you got to wait till somebody's born. You got to wait till they go through life. You got to train them up in order to bring out these inherent genetic markers so that they can be utilized. With cloning, you just you just make a Kanye. There's no parent standing in the way. There's no legality standing in the way. And then depending on where you are, if they weren't born, they're not human. If you depending on how your thinking is, if they're not born physically, they're not human. So what you do to them, how you test them, what tests you run on them, and everything like that, all of the limitations that kept them from discovering the mind matrix, the heart matrix, to a full degree because of human rights. I don't know if that applies for a clone.
So, with all that you just spoke on, going back to the whole CRISPR article, why use? Uh-oh, he'll be back here in a second, you all. My question is, why use non-viable or viable embryos
Okay, there we go.
with the ability to clone, with stem cell research and their development scientifically with those methodologies? Why even bother using viable or non-viable embryos? You could clone a whole person that has a mental illness or that has a disease that's incurable. And you could run your genetic therapy and testing on the clone. I mean, I'm sure there's similar ethical um, ethical questions involved with something like that as well. But you know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Your image,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you know, but your image is, your camera's not showing.
It's not show. Oh,
Not showing.
okay. I'm gonna step out and step back in. It's showing me on my end, but I'm gonna step out and step back in.
Indeed. Okay. No problem. No problem. We're just going to pause for a moment here so that he can try to get his camera image back up. You're tuned into Beyond the Veil podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in. Like, share, subscribe, like, share, and subscribe, please. We are definitely trying to bring you the best in an unusual way. This is an unusual podcast. We're just waiting for T to join us again. There he is. Welcome back.
That's all right. Back in the building.
Back building. But yeah, I don't know if you could make out my question because I know you were trying to get the image of your camera back up. But yeah, why use viable or non-viable embryos when you could just use the clone of a person? Like, let's say that I'm your doctor and I find out that you are getting ready to expire because of a malady, illness, or dis-ease within your physical body or within your brain. If I have the ability to replicate you while you're yet and still in the land of the living, and with your consent, why would I not be able to use the clone or replica of you? Um, and I mean, how long are we talking? How long would this take? You know what I mean? That's the other thing. Like, we have all these theories, and I'm saying that with air quotes, y'all. Not saying I don't believe some of you, and not saying that I believe all of you. But with the talk of cloning centers and the rumors surrounding Hollywood, some of the practices that are supposed and being implied or alleged. How long does it take to replicate and produce, you know, a cloned human? And what quality of clone? Genetic presentation, as an example, um, um, would come of this. How long would it take, and what would the quality be? And then if we have this science, why are we not using it? Like to instead of embryos, instead of the unborn, how they have a 50-50 chance, instead of doing all of that.
I got a speculative theory on that. The same reason I don't think that they are AI would be as great as they think it would be. The world changes.
Yeah,
As the world changes, so do genetics. As the atmosphere changes, so do genetics. As you know, as time progresses, so do genetics. So if they got people who were born in the past, then the people who are born right now would carry a different genetic sequence. So by getting a living embryo, I'm not a living embryo. What do they call it? A viable or non-viable embryo. You would have the opportunity to read from natural genetics as opposed to just the reproduction of natural genetics. You would actually have a living or not living, a naturally occurring genetic code to base your information on. So that might be why they're using viable and inviable embryos so that they're not limited to 1970, 1980, 1990 and the genetics that they have banked during that time.
gotcha. Good answer. Good answer. I think. Uh, Very good answer. Very good answer. All right. All right. Well, so we
Oh,
have.
one more last. I feel the wrap up coming. One more last thing before we wrap up here. 100,000 children come up missing in the United States each year.
Each year.
Each year, each year, there's 100,000 children that come up missing in the United States.
And that's on average, correct? You're dealing with that.
Yes, yep, yep, that's on average, and that's been for at least the last 3 years.
Because
And so,
I was going to add within the last 3 to 4 years, there's been, I want to say, over 300,000 that have gone missing a year.
mm, mm. So I just wanted to add that. I add that on. And it's just they just I want to talk about two of the cases of missing children that occurred.
Okay.
No, just one. You know what? I'll just limit it to one.
Oh, you're fine. Go into what you want. Yeah.
There was a young man who was at school. He was found in his gym with his organs removed, rolled up in a mat.
That was in Georgia, correct?
Yeah, that was in Georgia.
I remember that.
And again, I just want to relate it back to one thing. I'm saying this, and then I want to repeat something that we already said. Viable and inviable embryos, biological versus biological, pulling melanin from biological people, as opposed to pulling melanin from a copper dosed mushroom. Those are just interesting notes about the video.
Also interesting is the connection between a copper dosed mushroom and a melanated person, or a person with high amounts of neural EU, and forgive me, I forgot the third, but there's three different types of melanin.
Mm-hmm.
So
with frequencies, they have a direct effect on people. So we got these ones coming in. So you got if you put melanin in a tester and you ran some electricity through it, that's about as good as you're gonna get. There's an understanding until it actually happens, where people are affected. And then who knows?
yeah, absolutely. But yeah, look into that copper dosed mushrooms, y'all. That's just really check that connection. What is the mycelium network, and what role do we play in it?
Oh, and yeah, that's what I was gonna say. They were once you take in melanin, it heightens your vibration, raises your energetic level. Levels of awareness are a true thing. There
Hmm.
are some things that you can't be aware of until you have enough energy to be aware of it. There's some things low that you can't perceive on a low level vibration until your vibration goes low enough for you to perceive it. So, that's another thing about melanin that may cause a war. If you can't get to the level necessary to talk to somebody or to do something, but somebody else has enough energy to do it, that could be useful, especially if you were looking to control a paradigm.
Indeed. I think we're going to drop it off right there until we pick it back up again next week. Once again, thank you for your support Beyond the Veil podcast. I am your host, Jay Drizzy. This is the co-host, T T Manuel T Money.
Mhm,
Uh,
mhm.
we got some sponsorship coming up in the future here shortly, y'all. We got some wonderful things. Stay tuned. Like, share, and subscribe. We appreciate your support. The 2 new subscribers, shout out to you. Thank you for joining the channel. Um, you have a wonderful, wonderful weekend. And again, this has been Beyond the Veil.
Peace.